Let's unpack this further now. We've got Professor Mark Swilling, co-director of the Centre for Sustainability at the University of Stellenbosch and a member of the President's National Planning Commission. Now, this advisory body recently suggested the President call an energy emergency. It would make it easier to cut through the red tape that partly is responsible for the slow pace of renewable energy projects in South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Prof. Now, the President, short of declaring an energy emergency, are you confident that the speed at the red tape cutting that's required for these new projects is going to be achieved without that declaration of an emergency?
Yes, the National Planning Commission did not call for a state of emergency. It said this is such a serious crisis, treat it like an emergency. We did that in 2008. And basically, I think his speech last night acknowledged this is a crisis. We need urgent measures. So the National Energy Crisis Committee has been set up, a one-stop shop underneath it to get all the decision-making together to speed things up. And he talked about special legislation, which is going to go through Parliament, which would make that cutting of red tape possible so that delivery can be speeded up. So I think all the right things are being said, and there are plans behind many of the statements that have been made, and Operation Vulindlela has coordinated a lot of those plans in the presidency, and I think we're going to see action.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Commission also made a suggestion about NERSA as an example, that it may need to be worked around so we can speed these processes up as they begin to unfold. Is that option on the table?
Well, NERSA is established by legislation. It's not going to be that easy just to work around NERSA. What you can do with NERSA is put in place special legislation that would make it possible to cut down some of the steps, remove some of the bureaucratic obstacles, make sure that in the one-stop shop you have NERSA and all the other regulators together so that you can get decision-making through quickly enough. So there are 83 projects that are worth 76 billion rands worth of investment to create over 6,000 megawatts of power, which can happen in the next 24 months. And that will bring load shedding to an end.
Now, what is the Commission's most significant component of this plan? There are many elements that the President unpacked for us last night, many today reflecting on the fact that bid window 6, for example, getting a double up in terms of the production of the energy is a really positive move. Where does the NPC stand in terms of the most salient features of this plan?
The most significant statements were a commitment to energy security, and that hasn't ever been made that clear before. Secondly, an end to load shedding. And thirdly, and very importantly, a commitment to support Eskom and a statement that there is a belief in the competency of the management team. Those three together make it possible for things to move forward. Within that context, yes, you have the doubling of the size of bid window 6 to 5.2 gigawatts. You have the 83 projects, which is 6.2. If you add all of that up, that's much higher than the 10 gigawatts that the National Planning Commission was advocating in its statement. So this is very bold action. Yes, South Africans are cynical. They've heard many promises. Lots of statements haven't been followed through. But this is better than no statement. This is better than just bumping along the bottom, which is where we've been for the last 15 years of load shedding.
Mm-hmm. Some other cynicism that's coming through, Professor, is from the unions who today are worried about the cap on energy projects being lifted, saying that it puts at threat the jobs of those who currently work at Eskom. It was something that you recommended happen when we were trying to finalize a way forward when it comes to energy security in South Africa. So maybe just an explanation on what exactly the lifting of this cap actually means for the energy market in the country.
Well, what it means for the energy market is that we are going to mobilize 76 billion rands worth of investments in energy generation, which will bring load shedding to an end, which will benefit every single South African. The money that's invested, 76 billion, is part of also stimulating economic growth. And without economic growth, you cannot reduce unemployment. Yes, you are, according to official government policy, the Integrated Resource Plan, 16,000 megawatts, 16 gigawatts of existing coal-fired power stations need to be closed down by 2030. That's official government policy. That is going to result in a loss of jobs. But you can't close the old power stations until you've got new generation capacity on the grid. And that's where renewables comes in, because you can't build new coal. Nobody's going to fund that because of climate change.
Now, how do we make sure, as we roll out parts of the plan, Prof, that it benefits everybody? Because the concern at the moment is that the initial rush will benefit mostly the big players within the private sector and perhaps not open up opportunities for variety of players.
Well, surely ending load shedding benefits every single South African. Every single South African is affected by load shedding regularly, and it makes their lives a misery. Your clips showed that. So surely ending load shedding in 2 years is a benefit to everybody. Yes, it's true, there are big players in the renewable energy industry who are going to deliver large-scale projects, but there's also going to be rooftop solar. Rooftop solar is perfect for small and medium enterprises, and there will be a proliferation of businesses in that sector, especially if the banks get behind it and provide the funding that small and medium enterprises needs. And then the REAP with 5.2 gigawatts of capacity in the REAP, around what's that, 60 billion rand. A significant portion of that goes into local economic projects within the 50-kilometer radius, as well as enterprise development within small towns, which previously were completely marginal to the economy, because that's where we build renewable energy plants. So, I mean, actually, renewable energy impacts everybody, and there's opportunities for a large number of players if they get their act together. If you just sit and wait and say, okay, the president is talking again and it's completely irrelevant, he's never delivered before. If you just sit back and do nothing, well, yeah, nothing will happen.
I mean, there is the notion as well that environmental assessment studies are going to be shortened. Are there any concerns that this might then become detrimental for the environment?
Well, there is something called the Renewable Energy Development Zones, which are promulgated by the Department of Environmental Affairs and Forestry. And those zones are recommended as the areas where renewable energy investments should be concentrated. And they've been carefully designed and worked out by the CSIR to maximize both the resources that are required, i.e. wind and solar, but also minimize the environmental impacts. And within the boundaries of the regs, you can fast forward the environmental impact assessments with negative environmental consequences.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your time this evening. We've been speaking there to Professor Mark Swilling, who's the co-director of the Centre for Sustainability at the University of Stellenbosch.